accept the substitute bill. And I would ask Representative Thompson at this time and others who may want to comment for an explanation of the changes that are present in the proposed substitute bill. Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard some concerns that were raised in testimony and some concerns that were raised by members of the committee, so we set about trying to address some of those concerns. And the first one, if you have the comparative document, in the wake of what has transpired in the last week, and I'm sure everybody's reading the news with a lot of interest, Oklahoma has had their waiver pulled, and one of the things that was interesting about that was it kind of revealed that it may not matter what language you have. The federal government says if you don't have Common Core, you're going to be in jeopardy. But we're looking at this again to restore language that was in House Bill 487 that ultimately did a good job of defining college and career ready. So that's language that was originally struck. It will be in the substitute version, talking about essential academic content and skills, lifelong learning, clearly written, transparent, and understandable by parents. So that was language that was not in the previous substitute bill. It will be restored in the current bill. Moving on, we have for the English language arts, just a slight tweaking there, which formally said requires the use of English phonograms and their sounds. Instead, we have language that says a systematic approach to teaching phonetic awareness and phonics, both in context and independent of context. Again, this is an attempt to have clear language that is understandable as we go forward. You see then also the reference to 80% of English and British and American authors. We want to focus on imaginative literature. And again, that's addressing a concern, and part of the purpose of our bill is to restore more of the literary works rather than informational texts, which are such a key component of the Common Core English Language Arts standards. We also, for the science standards, again, a concern was raised that somehow there was a hidden agenda behind that. We've removed struck the language that says prohibits political or religious interpretation of scientific facts in favor of another. I think that language was actually was not quite as clear, was a little bit awkward and subject apparently to some interpretation. So now it will say requires, that provision is struck. We now have language that says requires the science standards to encourage students to analyze, critique, and review in an objective manner the scientific strengths and weaknesses of existing scientific theories covered in the standards. So again, moving to a set of standards that have been tested, proven effective with strong public support in the case of the Massachusetts standards, which again makes them unlike the Common Core right now. Nothing in the academic content standards is to be construed to promote any religious or non-religious doctrine, promote discrimination for or against a particular set of religious beliefs or non-beliefs, or promote discrimination for or against religion or non-religion. So again, an attempt to reassure people there that there was no particular philosophy or religion that we were touting there, just to ensure that in the classroom they can have a vigorous discussion that is not limited or, I guess, in some ways constrained by the standards that were in place in the Common Core. We have a time to review the standards, we're extending the timeline for the Massachusetts standards. One of the other concerns that was raised was 2 years is a very abrupt change, and so moving the time and effort that had been put into putting Common Core in, and we recognize that, we heard that concern, and certainly our goal is to ensure a smooth transition as we get rid of Common Core and move toward standards that are tested, proven, effective, and actually developed at the state level, unlike at the federal level. So this one will accomplish that goal. It gives a 3-year time frame for the Massachusetts standards. I think the other thing that will provide is more time for people to get used to it, and then as Ohio is writing its own new standards, they will have a good basis for which to do that, and they will have experience with the Massachusetts standards, which again, that element of tested, proven, and effective is very important as we go forward for the children of Ohio. Later on, requires the new academic content standards emphasize rigor. House Bill 487 had removed references to rigor, so we wanted to be consistent. I think we could put in some language about rigor in order to be consistent with House Bill 487 and the good provisions that it had. We are removing references to rigor. We have college and career readiness. We have high standards. We have ones that have been tested and proven effective. Massachusetts having had the top SAT scores in the nation while they ran, and again, we're pleased that Fordham had rated them as superior to the Common Core standards, so we take that notion seriously. Okay, so we've got the time frame there on model curriculum. I think we removed references to model curriculum. As you may have heard in multiple cases, Common Core was not about curriculum, so if standards are not about curriculum, obviously, why do you have references to model curriculum throughout the code? So we're addressing that issue as well to clarify for folks that we're putting standards in, but the curriculum will remain at the discretion of the local districts. And also, there was language about school districts and how they would not be penalized for their failure to adopt the content standards or the assessments. In revisiting that and talking with LSC, it's clear that the assessments are something that is required under federal law. And so the standard assessment, school districts will have to have the state assessment, but they will remain free to have whichever content standards they would like to have. So if they have Common Core and they think it's working great and they want to do that, they can do that. The assessments will be reflective of the Massachusetts standards that we're going to be adopting as part of this bill. And I think, again, curriculum as a result will kind of move in that direction. But ultimately, it's up to the school districts to do what they think is best. And I think it represents an additional restoration of local control that I think is important in the state. So I think that's most of the changes as we have introduced them.
All right, very good. Thanks for the explanation, Representative Thompson. Are there questions for Representative Thompson regarding the changes? Are there any objections to the acceptance of the sub-bill? Objections to the motion? Objection, Representative Ramos. Any further discussion on the substitute bill? Please call the roll. And again, this is on the motion to accept the sub-bill.
Chairman Huffman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Batchelder?
Aye.
Ranking Member Hurd?
Yes.
Representative Beebe?
Aye.
Representative Berkeley?
Yes.
Representative Derrickson?
Yes.
Representative Polanda?
Yes.
Representative Phillips?
Yes.
Representative Ramos?
No. Okay, motion passes.
Thompson?
Yes, I'm sorry, excuse me, motion passes. 11. The motion is accepted 9-1, we have one absence, don't we? Okay, very good. All right, go ahead, Representative Thompson.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize folks have written testimony based on the previous legislation, so certainly our apologies for that, but we'll understand when we try to put it best in context to your testimony today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to amend.
Your second, Representative Thompson.
The amendment is 3460, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And what the amendment does, it requires...
Excuse me, Representative Beaky, just to be clear, the 3-4 and 6-4X1. Go ahead, Representative Beaky, if you could explain the amendment.
Yes, the amendment, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, would require the four core committees that were created in House Bill 487 at the state level to compare Common Core with Massachusetts standards that were adopted in the legislation. And upon the comparison, to make sure that the standards are Massachusetts in the end, it will make recommendations to the State Board of Education to, as amended in this act, as a deliberate the final Ohio standards. In other words, we're just requiring those four committees set up to do a comparison between Common Core and Massachusetts, and then make recommendations to the State Board.
Okay, is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Speaker Batchelder.
that language in 487 is the language that was inserted in the bill after its passage in the House in front of the Senate.
That's correct, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Is there objection to the motion? All right, then the motion will become, or excuse me, the amendment will become part of the bill. All right, thank you. We now have an amended substitute bill before the committee. And just remind members or those who are going to testify, there are some changes. And I know some of you have written testimony and you'd like to read your testimony. And I won't stop you and say we already changed that. But if that happens, we're going to go ahead and let folks testify however it is that they would like to.